many days, the outer world can feel like a terrifying place. From things happening with the government, from war, conflict, people suffering from Supreme Court decisions. And when we see these things in our outer world, we are naturally affected, often, especially as sensitive, empathic people. And we notice that we start spinning out. It's hard to go through daily life. It's hard to feel okay when these things are happening in the outer world. So what we're going to go through in this video are what are the main key steps that I need to stay as a grounded, connected human, even when the outer world seems like it's going to hell in a handbasket pretty quick. That's what we're talking about in this video. The spiritual principles and inner alignment that will help you stay grounded and connected no matter what the outer world is doing. Let's take a look. Hey, Leslie Huddart here. I'm a spiritual guide, acupuncturist, and healer. I help empaths, healers, and sensitive people release the trauma trapped in their body so you can actually live your life on purpose without doing 20 more years of therapy, just working around the same things, but actually getting them out at the subtle body level. And in this video, we're talking about strategies and things that you need to actually stay a connected, peaceful human, even when things in your society, in your government, in the world in general, seem like they are really blowing up in ways that feel a little terrifying to you and your mind. So let's walk through these steps. Number one is actually, has a couple of parts, is a couple of mind shifts that I want you to make. Now, a mind shift you can kind of take as like a hypothesis. You don't have to take it as true or untrue, but just see what happens when you take this as something that really makes sense that you choose to operate from. The first mind shift, and we go deep with this in our Body Wisdom Academy training and formation, is one, it's not about what it's about. Remember that nothing in the outer world is really totally about what it is about. What that means is the way that things appear on the surface is generally only the top of the story. And what's actually happening has much more to do with lots of things. Other people's agendas, fear, separation of the mind. We must remember that the outer world is like a play or a movie that is unfolding. It doesn't mean that it's totally doesn't affect you in a non-substantial way, but we don't go to the movie theater and get so engrossed that when we leave the movie theater, we think that those things are actually happening. So we want to shift a little and get a little bit of observer mind distance. And we want to remember before we go into reaction that the outer world things, as true or as real as they seem, it's not about what it's about. Number two, mind shift, is that hope and despair are part of the same issue. Now, this is a little tough for some brains to get. So what I want you to walk through is to realize that hope and despair are part of the same thing. This video came about because one of our clients in our inner circle asked me the question, Leslie, I see that I'm going into despair. How do I not do that? And other times I hear people say, I'm losing hope. How do I have hope? How do I have hope? So from a deeper, grounded, spiritual, we could say non-dualistic understanding of spiritual reality, is that there is no need for despair, and you can also let go of hope. What that means is when we come to an understanding that what is unfolding is really just the play, like the video game, that it's the outer world, that yes, these things seem to have sometimes life or death consequences, but if inwardly your understanding of reality, which we're going to get to on a couple of these next steps, is an understanding that underneath that there is a oneness about reality, that you came here perhaps to, embody something in your life, that there is a greater spiritual understanding to the nature of embodiment in reality. When you're coming from a little bit more of that place, even if it's just believing in the understanding and the unity of nature and the unfolding of things, we can start to see that in itself, that your basic essence is good. The basic nature of humanity and this experience has great joy in it, even at the same time as we go through deep suffering. So if we can let go of despair and also of hope and start to come into relationship with the nature of what is, without judgment, without fear, without our mind separating it out or telling us that we are under attack, if we understand that the nature of reality is kind of like a spiritual endeavor, then this starts to free us up and loosen us to not get sucked down the rabbit hole. So number 2 is, and you might have to think about this a little while, happy to answer questions in the comment. Please save angry argumentative ones, maybe process those in a little bit more inwardly before they come out. Just take it as a hypothesis. You don't have to take it as true or untrue. And number 3 mind shift is that from a sort of inner spiritual unity perspective, despair is a misunderstanding of the nature of reality. If I am ultimately in connection with all things, if everything is ultimately arising for my benefit, then I can rest in that natural goodness more and focus on the things that I think really matter, despite the fact of what seems to be appearing on the outside. So these are kind of big ones. I hesitated whether to throw these at you at the beginning of the video, but there they are. Again, it doesn't fit for you. If you don't like it, just put it in a little box and push it to the side, no problem. Moving on to number 2. Something that you can do that really helps in these times when you feel like the whole world is blowing up a little bit is you can affirm what I call your working spiritual hypothesis. Now, if you'd like more about your working spiritual hypothesis, if you don't have one and how to formulate that, I'll put a link below. This is something that I often help people with, and coming up this year, we are walking people through our practical spirituality training, which helps you in a non-dogmatic, non-religious cornered type of way find your own landing of actual practical spirituality that serves your life. But part of this, your working spiritual hypothesis, essentially, what do you believe is really going on here? You might have a religious tradition that helps you inform that, but even if you don't, what I find is most people do have a sense of how do you answer these big questions? Why are we here? What's really going on? Who or what is in charge? And what does that force think about me? Do I have a two-way phone conversation, or is it just coming in one direction? So how you answer these questions, ideally written down on paper, is a start to really understanding and having an anchor that when you see things that seem very difficult in the outer world, you can actually come back to landing in what you choose to believe as true with your working spiritual hypothesis. Because the tricky nature of embodied reality is that it appears very real. You might have even heard one of those wonderful acronyms that FEAR, F-E-A-R, is false evidence appearing real. So false evidence appearing real is sort of the nature of fear and embodiment in the mind. And the only thing that ultimately counters the mind is our inner spiritual understanding, or we could say the way of the heart, as we teach in practical spirituality, for having a balance to that. So the problem I find is not that people don't have a working spiritual hypothesis, because most people do, even if they don't consider themselves religious. The problem is, one, it's not well defined, and two, that they don't connect it when the shit hits the fan in the outer world. So this is a big thing you can do. Define your working spiritual hypothesis and write it down in a way that when you are spiraling or really losing your stuff about what's happening in the outer world, you walk back over there and ground and reaffirm that. The next key point is a little bit of a hypothesis or a statement, because around being effective in the world. So what people often say is like, well, that sounds like you just say that you just shouldn't care and you should just go meditate in a cave. That's actually not what I'm saying. Here's a little working hypothesis about the world, is that I cannot be a clear actor in the world until I am clear inwardly. And if I am still getting triggered, if I can't even focus on my own interior life, if I can't connect with myself, if I can't connect with my internal world, if I can't connect with my friends and family, because I'm so anxious, roughed up, affected by what is happening in the outer world, arguably very outside of my own personal sphere, who the hell do you think you are going to be helped? You are a mess on the inside. A lot of spiritual principles recognize that we are really suffering in so many ways on so many levels. And our mind has this idea that I need to change the world, I need to have an effect. And this is not totally untrue, but just as when we are on the airplane ourselves getting the emergency instructions, you must put your oxygen mask on first before you help another person. So if you are not clear in yourself, you will not be very effective on the team to help anyone or anything outwardly, including society. So put your oxygen mask on first and recognize the truth that I must be clear in myself. So here's the test. If I am still disturbed to the point that I cannot connect with myself, I can't feel my body, I can't think, I can't function, I need to do inner work before I go and try and solve some outer world problem. Now, here's our last point. It is possible to be an actor in the outer world and to try and offer and be a part of outer world change. You can work for a cause, you can contribute in a way that feels meaningful for you. But do not skip the previous step. You must first be clear. You must be taking action from a place of clarity and connectedness rather than fear and anger and trying to fix something in that way. This is a way that we get out of what I call our 50% line. We have a personal responsibility in every relationship, our relationship to ourselves, our relationship to other people, and my relationship with you. I am contributing and you are also contributing. So I must be clear on my 50%. We also have a 50% line with the world and God in the universe. There are some things that are on God in the universe's plate. Some people might say, listing those off, life and death, when you come in and when you leave. One certainty about life and the spiritual nature of reality is that the time of death is uncertain and it will certainly come for everyone. That's not really my business. Wasn't set up by me, isn't implemented by me. Now, people could say, yes, we have actors, and what if someone murders someone else? We can get into the nitty-gritty, but that's a little bit of a mind category that ultimately can be solved by a little bit more trust in the unfolding of the way of the universe. So come back to an understanding that, number 3, that I cannot be clear in myself unless I actually take time and connect with what's really happening on the inside, and from there I can be a better actor in the world. And the last point is that as I'm acting out in the world, I have to be actually clear first about what is sometimes called my dharma. Or one way to translate this, it's an Eastern understanding thought that we each sort of have a calling, a way or a purpose that we're here. And that dharma or that purpose is more known by our inner selves than our brain. So before your brain tells you, in the outer world, I'm upset about this, so I should join this cause, we should notice that we're upset about something, but check in with ourselves and feel into the question, what is mine to do? There are some fights that you are not meant to fight. Very many that you are not meant to fight. Leave those into other people's 50% line. Sometimes you got to give that back to God in the universe. They are handling it. God does not need you as a secretary. And some of the world problems, though they are very heart-wrenching and difficult, are the nature of suffering in reality and also don't need you as a secretary. If you feel into, in yourself, something that you notice in the outer world and you feel deeply called and affected to it, and you tune in with yourself and your body, and we teach these ways of subtle body work in our deeper trainings. If you don't already have a way to really hear what the inner voice and the heart is saying, you ask first, is this mine to do? What am I being called to? I once saw a wonderful t-shirt that said, God answers prayers, and sometimes the answer is no. You could say the same thing, whether it's universe or God, that we are being called to things and we are also not being called to things. So instead of following your mind out into the world, come back into the body, which is the spokesperson for your soul, and tune in first to see if this is actually yours to do or not. So, lots of struggle and suffering in the outer world. This is the nature of reality. And when we see that, we cannot be sucked into it like a vortex if we use these tools. Make a few sort of mind shift understandings that it's not about what it's about. Don't go down that line of just surface thinking. You are not a surface person if you are watching this video. Don't let your mind drag you down there. Number 2, remember, hope and despair are part of separation and not something that I need to go in. I need to build my relationship with what is. And remember that despair is a misunderstanding of that unity nature of reality. You can work towards, another point too, affirming your working spiritual hypothesis about what you think is really happening here and learn to stand on that more. If you need help with that, check out the links below for practical spirituality training. Remember, if you are called to help with the suffering, that you cannot be a clear helper unless you are somewhat clear and at least not spinning, mind spinning and losing your inner peace in yourself. And before you go out into the world, last point, you actually need to really ask what you are being called to do. I hope these have been helpful. It can be very difficult to be a human. May these practices help you stay more connected to yourself, which will help bring you into a more balanced and effective way of being a force for love in the world. Thank you, thank you, thank you. If you know somebody that has been having a particularly hard time with the way that the world is unfolding, please send them this video. I'm on a mission to help as many people as I possibly can, and I can't do that without you. We are in this together. This is Leslie Huddart saying you are a soul with a body, and you deserve great things. See you next time.